I'm Neelam Pandey. Well, the much awaited reshuffle of the Modi government finally took place on Wednesday with 36 new faces being given new responsibilities. At the same time, we saw 12 ministers resigning, and these include Health Minister Harsh Vardhan, Ravi Shankar Prasad, Prakash Javadekar, all senior leaders of the Bharatiya Janata Party. So, who are the winners and the losers as far as this new cabinet is concerned? We will take your questions. If you have any suggestions, any comments, do send us in. So we will start with the first question. How do you see this cabinet with these 36 new faces?
Well, it's a complete overhaul. In fact, we are not expecting this kind of an overhaul. You know, now total in the Union Council of Ministers, you have 78 ministers, including the Prime Minister. So out of, leave him out, we have 77 ministers, out of which 36 are new faces.
Right.
So almost half of the team is new. Then you have some major upgradation, half a dozen ministers were upgraded. So when you talk about losers and winners, of course, like people who have lost out, 7 cabinet ministers had to resign. And overall, a dozen ministers were sacked, out of which 7 were heavyweight cabinet ministers. People like, say, Ravi Shankar Prasad, Prakash Javadekar, even education minister, Ramesh Pokhriyal was not keeping well, so that was on the health grounds. But otherwise, health minister, labor minister, it's a complete overhaul. So the kind of dent the government might have suffered because of COVID mismanagement, now there has been a very conscious effort to actually change things around, bring in new faces, kind of infuse the government with fresh energy and innovative ideas. Let's see how it works out. But from the Prime Minister's side, well, there has been a very conscious attempt. He wants new ideas flowing in from ministers. It's a fact that it's mostly PMO driven. But the ministers, they can't be just tweeting and retweeting things that the PM has said. Message is that does not work anymore. You need to prove yourself, prove your mettle, prove your competence.
A lot of young faces have also been given responsibilities.
Yes, there are some interesting data points, like below 50, you have 14 ministers, including 6 in the cabinet actually. And if you see, most of them are between 50 and 60.
Right.
So overall, if you look at the average age of this Council of Ministers, it was 61 earlier, it's down to 58 years. So yes, there are new people, younger people, and there are some interesting inductions, like say Ashulini Vaishnav, for instance. He's just a 1994 batch officer, first time in Rajya Sabha, and he has heavy responsibilities.
Right.
So you have 2 former bureaucrats, Ashulini Vaishnav and RCP Singh. You already had others like, former diplomat Hardik Puri, you have Jaishankar. So in 2019, in fact, Hardik Puri came way back in 2017, but in 19 also you saw Jaishankar being brought in. Now you have some new people coming in, people who already have a lot of experience in administration, in different capacities, of course. Like some were bureaucrats and some were ministers already. You have somebody like Jyotiraditya Scindia, you have 2 chief ministers. In fact, in the cabinet, you have 4 former chief ministers now. So let's see how they turn things around.
Well, we are getting a lot of questions. I'll start with a few now. Keval Khanna wants to know, strong growing economy and creating jobs is the need of the hour. How such a bulky cabinet can help?
Bulky cabinet, yes. But then, you have distribution of portfolios also. So one minister handling too many portfolios does not really serve the purpose. So Prime Minister's critics may say that, okay, when he had started in 2014, the slogan was minimum government, maximum governance, and now you have 78 ministers, including the Prime Minister, just 3 short of the maximum you could have gone for. So that may be the case, but governance is not about slogans. You have one minister handling too many things, it doesn't work. Yes, you are talking about job creation. Yeah, one thing that I have been noticing is, say, this Skill India slogan.
Right.
From the beginning, you have so many ministers kind of handling this portfolio. You started with Rajiv Pratap Rudy, then it was given to Dharmendra Pradhan for a while. Then Mahendranath Pandey was brought in. Now it has gone back to Dharmendra Pradhan. So this entire, it has turned out to be a slogan actually. You see a lot of data points when you talk to the ministry guys that, okay, you have created this and that. But somehow the PM does not seem to be having enough confidence in any minister to run this very important ministry because it keeps changing hands.
But it's also probably been done to sort of, the synergy between education and skill education.
Yeah, it's a good thing, but I'm just saying, like, in a way, it's the fourth time the ministry has changed hands.
Right. Soham Roy wants to know, what does the elevation of Ashwini Vaishnav indicate? What worked in his favor, and what is the backstory behind this? Does this have any link with the politics in Odisha?
It does, of course. I mean, you don't expect the Prime Minister to do anything which has nothing to do with politics. I mean, it's never purely governance. So as our headline said that, it's rebooting governance tempered with politics. So of course, Ashwini Vaishnav, he was an Odisha cadre officer, IAS officer. He was brought to the Rajya Sabha with the help of the BJD.
Right.
So he is becoming the face now. So you already had Dharmendra Pradhan. Now another person from Odisha becoming a face. He has been given some very important responsibilities. So you'll have to watch out for him because the way he has been elevated signals something.
Pranav wants to know, why was Ramesh Pokhriyal sacked? You did touch upon
it. Was because of ill health. Of course, like there were lots of issues. Education policy, for instance, national education policy has been pending for a while. It has to be rolled out from this year. During the pandemic, of course, the way the entire education system was hit, but not that Pokhriyal was found wanting in something. I mean, there is nothing in particular against him, not that there was any controversy, but this time it's purely on account of his health.
Hitesh Nautiyal wants to know, according to you, who will be the leader of House after Gehlot's exit?
We don't know. I mean, leader
in the Rajya Sabha.
Let's see, that's an interesting question actually. I won't be speculating on this, but that's an interesting question. Frankly, I have not really thought about it. So.
Philip Raj wants to know, will cabinet expansion really work here without decentralization of power? Decision and mistakes have to be owned by each ministry.
That's true, but it all depends on the Prime Minister. I mean, how much work do you allocate? Because you have sacked the health minister, but the fact is, it was the entire COVID management was PMO driven. But what did not help Harshvardhan's cause was all his controversial statements. I mean, in March, when you have this second wave kind of picking up, he said that it's over. And over the next 1 year, over the next several months you saw, he was just making statements like, even as a minister, even if it's completely PMO driven, you have to come up with ideas. And somehow the PM did not seem to have the confidence in him, because whenever you saw the Prime Minister meeting experts, Prime Minister meeting, oxygen producers, or having meetings with the chief ministers of states where you had big spike in cases, you did not really see Dr. Harshvardhan sitting in those meetings. So there was this trust deficit which was very visible, at least from the day the second wave started. Actually.
N. Sarveshwari wants to know, the BJP has promoted technocrat turned politicians instead of lateral entry. Your take?
That's good. I mean, you have to bring in expertise from wherever you can. You saw how Narasimha Rao brought Manmohan Singh as the finance minister in 91, and it worked. I mean, it completely changed the economic landscape. So you have to have experts from outside who are not really working under political compulsions and who don't really have to be all political faces.
Specialized.
People who specialize in things. So I think it's a welcome move.
Rupesh Patel wants to know why the FM has not been changed. Economy continues to fall down. Any idea or guess? The finance minister.
Well, we have seen Nirmala Sitharaman does enjoy the trust of the Prime Minister. And again, economic management is driven by the PMO. And not that, it's pandemic driven. Our editor-in-chief Shekhar Gupta has spoken about it in several episodes of Cut the Clutter, how economy was going down even before the pandemic started, continued to be so. But having said that, Nirmala Sitharaman I won't say seems, because she is definitely enjoying the trust of the Prime Minister and she is rolling out everything that she is asked to execute. So that probably explains there is no change.
Hitesh Nautiyal wants to know, don't you think BJP now also needs to revamp Nadda's team as well based on merit and talent?
Well, first of all, there will be a revamp in the BJP team also. For instance, you have seen Bhupendra Yadav was a powerful BJP General Secretary. He has been appointed a cabinet minister. You have some senior ministers who have quit, people like, say, Ravi Shankar Prasad. Now, they will all be accommodated in the party units. And you have some very competent people. I mean, you may question why Ravi Shankar Prasad was sacked and whether it was on merit or there was some other reason. But when you have such senior people going, obviously they'll be getting more responsibilities in the organization. And yes, that has to be based on merit, because we have spoken about it when Nadda kind of revamped his team or reconstituted his team after becoming the president last year. And it was like, pick and choose. We did not really see merit as the criteria there. Hope like this time when he revamps the team, he has enough resources available. We have many talented people who are leaving the government, joining the party, and there are many others, in fact, out there who are available. So we just hope that when the BJP revamps the team, merit becomes the criteria this time.
Ahmed Faraz wants to know, do you think ministers with portfolios where their work was criticized by foreign media especially were removed? Do you think that was a factor?
Not really. I don't really think this government goes by what the foreign media tells it to do. That, okay, we don't like, suppose if Ravi Shankar Prasad is having a spat with Twitter, that will not be influencing PM Modi's decision. So that's very clear. And you don't really see that if a minister is going overboard and he has done things which the foreign media may or may not like, and just mind you, that minister has to have the go-ahead from right from the top. So no minister does here anything on his or her own. So,
and
then just to add to that, I mean, look at the issues on which foreign media actually went after these ministers. You may be talking about Citizenship Amendment Act, but then that had the backing of the Prime Minister. Ex-Prime Minister and Amit Shah did that.
Twitter, the controversy.
Twitter, again, you cannot say that Ravi Shankar Prasad was doing things on his own. If you have something like this regulations or new IT rules for social media intermediaries or even digital channels. I mean, all these things are basically done at the behest of the PMO. We are talking about the Modi government here. So just to assume that these ministers were doing things on their own, I mean, that will be a bit of a fallacy.
N. Sarveshwari wants to know how BJP managed to convince JDU with one cabinet berth when the latter was asking for 4, and at the same time, what went wrong with Sushil Modi?
Went wrong with Sushil Modi?
Sushil Modi.
JDU, you're right, in 2019, JDU did not join the government because it wanted 3 ministries, at least 1 cabinet, 2 MOSs, if not 2 cabinet and 1 MOS. They didn't agree, but this time how they've agreed to is, this Pashupati Paras from the LJP. He has been appointed the cabinet minister. Now, Nitish Kumar seems to have made it a personal mission to actually destroy Chirag Paswan politically in Bihar, because Chirag Paswan had hurt him very much in Bihar, bringing down his tally, making him the number 2 in the NDA actually, in terms of the numerical strength in the assembly. And Nitish Kumar is paying him back. I mean, JDU was instrumental in the split in the LJP.
Right.
When you got all the JDU MPs in Lok Sabha kind of coming together and electing Pashupati Paras as their leader in the Lok Sabha. And it was immediately recognized by the Lok Sabha Speaker also. I mean, Pashupati Paras as a leader. Now he has been made the minister, so Chirag Paswan may or may not like this, but thing is, somehow Nitish Kumar has managed to get the BJP to endorse this rebel group as the real LJP. So, in a way, Nitish Kumar has got 2 cabinet portfolios, I mean, you can say.
And Sushil Modi?
Sushil Modi, yes. I mean, somehow he's not getting along with the high command. Sushil Modi, when he was the deputy chief minister in Bihar, he was known as, Nitish Kumar's man. He was the one who was keeping the entire alliance together solidly, and he was Nitish Kumar's voice actually in the BJP. And somehow High Command seems to be looking beyond that now, when the BJP has to have its own strategy in Bihar. It doesn't have to be on the clutches of the JDU anymore. It's the largest party in the Bihar Assembly. So people who are seen to as close to Nitish Kumar aren't really getting favored here, the central leadership. You might say that, okay, if you have inducted Pashupati Paras at the behest of Nitish Kumar or JDU, why this contradiction? But there, I don't see there any contradiction. At one point, you have the BJP trying to run the government in Bihar smoothly. You don't really want Nitish Kumar to kind of, like what he did in 2015, going with some other party and becoming the CM. You want Nitish Kumar to stay with the NDA, to be part of the NDA, but at the same time, BJP would be looking at expanding its own footprints all across the state.
And its own leadership. Shikha Tanwar wants to know, we have touched upon this question, but she wants to get some details. Why did Ramesh Pokhriyal resign? Is health issue just an excuse? He was performing well. And then she goes on to say, if so many ministers have been added, then why does Piyush Goyal still have so many ministries?
Oh, no. First of all, in Ramesh Pokhriyal's case, there are no ifs and buts. It was on health ground. Actually, we were also expecting it, because we were told about
the post-COVID
complications, and it's serious. So it's not about his competence, at least when it comes to his resignation. Secondly, Piyush Goyal is acknowledged widely actually as a very competent minister. And everywhere, whichever sector he took up, I mean, you saw things moving. He was the power minister, he did quite a few things. Railways, he was doing a lot of experiments, a lot of innovative ideas were flowing in. Commerce also, he was doing pretty well, when he was holding this. So, Piyush Goyal is one of the most competent ministers of this government, and naturally, I mean, he will be giving more and more portfolios, because the Prime Minister seems to rely on him.
Saurabh Tripathi wants to know, a lot of questions about Mr. Pokhriyal. Do you think Ramesh Pokhriyal will be moved to Uttarakhand, which can help BJP form a stable government there?
No, Ramesh Pokhriyal was very interested in the Chief Minister's job. He had been interested ever since he took over as the Education Minister at the center, in fact. So, every time, as we were given to understand by his people and he himself, he would always be looking at possible changes in Uttarakhand. Unfortunately, in the past 4.5 months, we had 2 new Chief Ministers, but Ramesh Pokhriyal did not get his chance. Even now, look, Ramesh Pokhriyal was the Brahmin face from Uttarakhand in the Union Cabinet. He has been replaced by another Brahmin, that is Ajay Bhatt. So I don't really see him playing much of a role in Uttarakhand now.
Sanket Kulkarni says, hello Neelam and DK. Hello Sanket. Hardeep Singh's promotion is due to his work more than Punjab election, as BJP is weak in Punjab and Hardeep is not a mass leader.
Agree. Hardeep Singh, his promotion is totally on account of merit. You are absolutely right. He has been given more now. He has got Petroleum Ministry to go with his Housing Ministry. Central Vista project he has been focusing on. I mean, he is acknowledged as a very competent minister. He happens to be from Punjab, which is pole bound. So obviously there will be some links that people will be looking at. But you are right. Punjab is not a state where BJP is looking to kind of turn the corner in terms of its political expansion in the coming months, or even leading to the next assembly elections. So Hardeep Singh Puri, in this case, I would say yes, the promotion is on account of merit.
Ayushman Mukherjee wants to know what is going to be the agenda for Ministry of Corporation. Will cooperatives be the new push for rural economic revival?
That's the idea actually, although when it comes to agenda, we have not been told what exactly the ministry will be doing. So what how we were briefed was like it's going to kind of strengthen the cooperative movement. In coming days, we'll know more. I mean, what exactly is basically is going to be the remit of this ministry, because it's with Amit Shah now, so it has to have a very important role. It cannot be just an addendum to Amit Shah's portfolios. But what exactly this ministry will be doing, we'll see in the next coming days.
Akshat Chaturvedi wants to know, what do you think was the reason behind giving Hardik Puri, one of the more eloquent and efficient ministers, the petroleum ministry, as well as especially with the push towards sustainability? Do you think that could be one of the reasons that he's been performing well?
That is the reason he has been performing well, we have discussed. Petroleum was given to him because, see, education is a big sector. Dharmendra Pradhan was moved to education. Now, it's not something that, when you're in education, you have to have complete focus on that sector. And politically also, it's a very sensitive sector. So, I think the idea is to give Dharmendra Pradhan enough time and space to work in that ministry. He has been given another ministry, that is skill development, but I think because Rajiv Chandrasekhar is the MOS for skill development, I think Dharmendra Pradhan will lean more on Rajiv Chandrasekhar to deliver when it comes to skill development, entrepreneurship, and he will be focusing on education. So taking petroleum ministry away from him is more about, readjusting. Not that he was performing badly. I mean, Ujjwala
some sort of balance being
Pradhan did pretty
created.
well as a minister. But then, because he had to be given another heavy portfolio, petroleum was taken away from him. And Hardik Puri, given the way he has proved his competence as a minister, I mean, he was a fit person to take up the job.
And Sarveshwari has another question for you. What's worked for Mansibhai Mandavia which led to his promotion?
Mandavia, he was a very low profile person, but when it comes to the health ministry being given to him, as an MOS for chemicals and fertilizers, he did some really commendable stuff. For instance, in Aushadhi scheme, the government has done very well. So you will be seeing our story. My colleague Himani Chanda will be doing the story in a while. You will read that. Watch out for that story on the print website. But in Aushadhi schemes, he did very well. When it comes to drugs, availability of drugs during the pandemic, he was the man. I mean, we are dependent totally on imports. I mean, at least 80% of our requirement is met by imports. But then during the pandemic, we did not really face any problems as such when it comes to availability of drugs. So Mandavia did show his kind of competence, especially in this sector, as a Minister of State. So his promotion, I think,
is on that account.
It's on that count.
Pradyumna Rakhe wants you to talk about Nitin Gadkari. What went wrong there?
Nitin Gadkari, well, he's the former BJP president, but the fact is, although his competence is not to be questioned, right from his days as a minister in Maharashtra government, but somehow in this regime, Nitin Gadkari, despite his good performance, he remains a bit isolated. So, even though in road sector he has done very well, I mean, nobody has any doubt about it. MSME has been taken away, so it's more about, I would say, another signal to him. He's being downsized all the time. So otherwise, somebody of his seniority you would expect to be in the CCS, he's not there. It's more about the equations within the BJP, especially in today's dispensation.
Pranav wants to know, isn't Jyotiraditya Scindia overqualified for an aviation minister? Doesn't he deserve something better?
Absolutely. I really think in civil aviation, I mean, that was not a portfolio for him. He should have been challenged more. In power sector, for instance, he had done a very good job. We have spoken about it earlier. Even then Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh admired his initiative in the power sector. In civil aviation, when Jyotiraditya's father was holding the sector, then, Indian Airlines was the Maharaja of the Indian sky, which is not the case anymore. So now he will be presiding over the, sale of the Air India now. Then, of course, you have private airlines, a few things here and there, but for somebody of his competence, I think he deserved a heavier portfolio, actually.
Swati Krishnan wants to know, how much was RSS involved in this shake-up?
Not much, because if you see how the kind of people who have been dropped, only yesterday I was talking to some RSS people and they were laughing actually. R.K. Singh, for instance, R.K. Singh has been promoted. He was the Home Secretary and this term, saffron terror, is attributed to him. That he was the one who coined this thing, saffron terror. Then he became a minister. Now he has been promoted. So RSS people were laughing that you guys are talking about our influence, Just say somebody who coined saffron terror has been promoted again. That apart, you saw Sarangi, that minister from Odisha, is a hardcore RSS person. He has been dropped. So if you had RSS actually influencing this decision, you won't really see these people
being dropped.
People like Sarangi being dropped.
Purab Rawat wants to know, was the cabinet shuffle a necessity or just a look, or a makeover done keeping elections in mind?
I would say both, because it was a necessity, because we have discussed it in previous episode, how the ministers, you saw all the ministers basically just, being active on Twitter. I mean, how many times you look at their Twitter timeline, how many things they talk about their achievements as ministers, and how many posts you have about what Amit Shah said or JP Nadda said or the PM said.
Right.
So singing PMs about your Prime Minister and other people like Amit Shah, I mean, that became the primary job. And somehow that innovation was missing in terms of ideas. They were not coming up with anything. It was like, okay, whatever PMO asked them, they would pass it on to the bureaucrats to execute. So that energy was missing completely. So the revamp was necessary. When it comes to elections, yes, I mean, the elections were very much in the PM's mind when he was looking at the reshuffle. Are very evident. And you see, from UP you have 7 additions. So today you have about 16 ministers from Uttar Pradesh. It's like, when it comes to UP's representation in the Lok Sabha, it's 15% of the total Lok Sabha seats. It has 80 Lok Sabha seats. And now when it comes to representation in the government, it's, I think, close to 16% or something. So it has to do with this. And when you talk about 7 new inductions, we are talking about inductions of 3 OBCs, 3 Dalits, 1 Brahmin. Most of them are not very well-known faces or political heavyweights or people who are known for their administrative efficiency. They have been picked up to send signals to different social groups. So yes, he had elections in mind, of course, but then a revamp was a necessity that he had to carry out with, and he has done some innovations of his own. Now in his government, you have somebody from Wharton, somebody from Stanford. I'm talking about
a lot of doctors.
And Scindia, many doctors. They say, so they tell you that now in the ministry you have 13 lawyers, 6 doctors, 5 engineers. Good. I mean, if people with abilities, with nice educational background, with good exposure to or good administrative experience in the past, if they have been brought in, let's hope that it works.
Well, there are a lot of questions, but I'll just take one more. BJP has changed its team, but CWC of Congress continues with all defeated faces of 2014. So Sankalp wants to know, what about their accountability? Also, any chance of Gadkari doing a VP Singh?
No. First, let's not talk about CDC, CWC. We're talking about the cabinet. Congress, we can do another episode on Congress, and we know what is happening in the Congress. There is not much to talk about. So Congress right now, the entire focus is on the preservation of the first family of the Congress, the Gandhis. So naturally, you see everything kind of going on. Or I mean, you don't really see any system in place there. It's just everybody actually, the so-called loyalists coming together to kind of strengthen the family. You have another set of people who think the party is not doing well. They are speaking out, but, well, total confusion in the Congress. We'll not talk about it. As for Gadkari, no. When you're comparing with VP Singh, see, he's a party loyalist. He's from the RSS. He's very close to the RSS. He's not somebody who would kind of, he may or may not have differences with the Prime Minister, or you have never heard Gadkari talking against the Prime Minister. To assume that he will do a VP Singh, and why, for what? I see that happening. And he is a party loyalist who has served the party for so long. He has been a party president. I don't really think this thought may even be occurring in his mind. Forget about the opportunity.
Well, thank you so much for such a detailed explanation. There are a lot of questions which I will send it to you. You can answer them personally. And at the same time, we will have to wait and watch for to see how these ministers will actually perform, but at the same time, do watch out for our political coverage on the recent reshuffle, and do keep tracking our work on our social media platform as well as our website.
Thank you.